out by saying that I'm a recovering CIA officer. You all that were here this morning, I do go to weekly meetings, Agency Anonymous, so I'm getting there. I was a decorated CIA officer. Part of that is in the book, which we fought to get out. Initially, they told me I could never say I worked there. We fought them and we beat them on that one, and we got some things in the book eventually. I went on deadly assignments for my agency in my country. I loved my country. I was very dedicated to some of those assignments. They told us we may not come back from. No problem. That's what we did. But the higher I got up in the agency, the more I began to see illegal, unconstitutional, sometimes criminal activity that the agency and some other sectors of the shadow government, I call it, were doing things that were illegal and unconstitutional. And I always have to say this: the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It supersedes every other law in the U.S. criminal justice system and the judicial branch. That's worth remembering. When the U.S. government violates the Constitution, they are committing multiple felonies based on the foundation of our government. We must always remember that. So, as a federal agent, I had to swear an oath to the Constitution to defend the Constitution and our country against enemies, foreign and domestic. The problem was there were some that were domestic, and there were some that happened to be in our own government. So I had to make a decision. Was I going to uphold my oath to the Constitution, or was I going to shrink back? And for me, it was an easy choice. I chose to stand for the Constitution, and that's why I'm here this evening. We have to. It's because we have been so busy with our lives, just trying to survive, that they've been able to get away with doing what they've done. This is a wake-up call. This is an alert. This whole conference and the one that's subsequently going to come after this is a wake-up call. It is almost too late to stop what is now a post-constitutional government. The people are no longer ruling in our country. The government, in a tyrannical form, is now ruling the people by subversion, force, and fear. Sadly, that's what we have today. The reason I am here is the question is always asked, where are the whistleblowers? If there is a covert geoengineering program, why aren't people coming out and blowing the whistle on it if it's so dangerous? The NSA surveillance program, if it wasn't for Edward Snowden, who both the Democratic and Republican Party have come out publicly and said they want him assassinated. If it wasn't for Edward Snowden, would we know about the NSA spying program that was collecting 1.5 billion pieces of information on you and me and our telephones and our internet communications, our emails? That's what they were doing, not on terrorists, on us. And they were storing it in the Utah data center, which is still there forever. So if there's something you do later on that they're not real happy with, they've got your emails, your text, your cell phone conversations, and everything's still stored in the database. And all that stuff, by the way, is still there on you, not on terrorists. Every single American citizen. So this is what we have here. We have a government that is functioning outside the Constitution. This is the size of the secret government. I call it the shadow government. There are some people call it the deep state. Take your pick. Same thing. We've got the CIA, functions covert programs. They're probably the most out of control because their charter is so loose. The IRS has covert programs. FBI, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, Department of State, Department of Justice, the NSA, and I have added the National Weather Service and NOAA, because as Dane, I think, told you, the National Weather Service and NOAA are now binding their employees with secrecy agreements so they cannot talk without penalty of prison about some of these climate programs that they're doing. That's called a red flag. That's what we're facing. Here is the first whistleblower, John F. Kennedy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. One of the greatest speeches ever given in terms of the Constitution. And there is a very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That was a prophetic message by John F. Kennedy, April 27, 1961. We all know what happened to him in 1963, don't we? They had identified, John F. Kennedy and Robert had identified mafia connections within the CIA. There was an assassination program. They engaged in the Bay of Pigs without his knowledge. He had come out publicly and said he was going to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces and dismantle it. And then in 1963, we saw what happened. 9/11, we don't have time to go into that. I just want to say this. I teach criminal investigations at a university. 9/11 was immediately labeled a terrorist event, and there was a reason for that. When you label it a terrorist event, it stops any sort of criminal investigation right in its tracks. If they would have done a criminal investigation of 9/11, it would have uncovered things that would have painted a whole different picture about why those buildings came down. I would encourage you to, architects and engineers for truth have done an outstanding video about Tower 7. Tower 7 was not hit by a plane, and it came down under controlled definition. Now, I'm a former CIA analyst, and I'm saying that based on a whole lot of research. That was not done by a plane. And just finally, when the towers came down, hundreds of tons of metal, steel, marble, and concrete turned to dust before it hit the ground. So much so that there was almost no seismic activity when the buildings hit the ground. It was all dust. You can see steel girders as they come down, if any of you seen that, literally vaporize and turn to dust as they fall down. That is not natural. All we're going to say there. I recommend you look into a criminal investigation of 9/11 and get past the terrorist narrative, which has been a favorite one for decades. Where are the whistleblowers? I come from the belly of the beast. I was an interviewer, interrogator. I was a counterintelligence agent. I was a polygraph examiner. I was an internal investigator, and on and on and on. And so I know this system, and I know it well, and then I experienced it personally. Why don't people come out in these secret programs that they know are illegal and unconstitutional? Why don't they come out and blow the whistle and tell people what's going on? Well, this is why. The U.S. government, every secret operational program that it has, forces the employee or coerces the employee, the person, into signing what is called a secrecy agreement, non-disclosure agreement. Now, back in the original days, the secrecy agreement was created to protect legitimate sources and methods, military technology and things like that. That was okay, that was fine. The secrecy agreement protected us when we went out in the field, because if they found out who we were, we wouldn't just be killed, we would have been tortured. So it protected our identities, protects the identities of troops in the field doing movements out during wartime. That's how it started. But it's been taken and it's been turned into a monster where the secrecy agreement is now being used as the ultimate tool of intimidation. Every employee that gets a job and obtains knowledge of these covert programs, the Air Force geoengineering program, in my opinion, has to sign this agreement. What the agreement says is, if you disclose anything that you know about this program, you can be terminated or you can force criminal penalties. In other words, you can be put in prison. Good friend, we hope will be speaking at our next event, was put in prison by the CIA for 2 years. That he exposed the torture program, which was a lot more than waterboarding, folks. As a matter of fact, they got almost nothing out of waterboarding. People died. It was bad. Anyway, he came out publicly talked about the torture program, made one mistake, one wrong word. They convicted him, John Kirikow, and they put him in prison for 2 years. Modern day hero. Just got out. So served 2 years for coming out and trying to alert people about what was going on. I was talking to somebody in the back. I have to watch every single word I say because they are just waiting for one thing. And so it's a constant screen. You don't want to give them any ammunition to put in their gun. So there's binding power, penalties, and threats for the secrecy agreement. That stops 99% of the people right there. Oh man, I'm not going there. I'll just look the other way. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want my life destroyed. Now, there is a massive, mammoth, complex, secret mechanism in the U.S. government. It's called the intelligence community. It is so powerful that not even the Congress or the Senate can control it. Matter of fact, it controls them. It does whatever it wants. They have these Senate investigations, and they'll come and they say, sorry, Senator, we can't tell you what we're doing because you don't have the agency clearance. And that's where it's shut down. Benghazi is an example. The NSA surveillance program is an example. Where did those go? Nowhere. I sit on the Citizens Commission of Benghazi, and that's a whole other story, maybe the next conference. Anyway, Began in 1948. I talk about this in the book real quickly. An Air Force B-2 bomber had 4 RCA civilian engineers on board. The plane went down in a horrible accident. A couple of the pilots parachuted out. All 4 engineers were killed in a horrible crash. The widows of the engineers demanded to know from the Air Force why the plane crashed and why their husbands died. The Air Force came back and said, well, we can't tell you that because it's secret. Turns out it was gross negligence on behalf of the pilot. Drove the plane into the ground. Hit the wrong flaps, hit the thruster instead of the opposite, and literally drove that bomber right into the farmland. I've been to the site. I have pictures of it in the book. So the families pushed it and said, no, it wasn't classified. You can't do that. We're suing you for the death of our husbands. So the United States government, the executive branch, created what's called the state's secrets privilege. The state's secrets privilege was literally, the wording was derived from the monarchy of the King of England, which gave the King of England absolute power to shut down any case they deemed was unacceptable. To shut it down. The state secrets privilege was used to shut down these 4 widows' case. It was shut down. It was sealed in federal court so that no one, including Congress, the Senate, and their attorneys, would ever see it. That's where this all began in 1948. And it's gotten far worse from there. People who have been made sick, or their family, or anyone else, they have lost all their rights to due process. They're not told that. I found that out the hard way when I tried to sue the government, and they came back and said, sorry, pal, you don't have any rights. So I took a different course, which I'll tell you about here in a moment. So that's how they shut them up, too. There is within each federal agency, now remember, since 1948, this procedure has been perfected. It is a science to destroy a whistleblower from the very beginning. They come to a supervisor. They may even have the courage to call their congressman or senator about this illegal operation. And the first thing that happens is they start getting promotions denied, even though they're top performers. Their promotions are denied. They're given embarrassing assignments where they're put in the corner of a building somewhere so that everybody knows that they're being penalized for this. If they continue to blow the whistle and push it even farther, they'll do things like this. I have seen this personally. They'll raise the interest rates on the credit union loans so that their cars and other loans are unaffordable. If they try to pull out their retirement funds to provide for their family, and especially in the case where they've been driven out of the organization will block their retirement funds so the family will be destroyed financially. Now that is a felony. For a federal agency to deny the retirement funds of an employee is a felony. I've seen them do that. And it was an interesting case. They will do that. Now, another thing that they will do, just so you all know this, and I want the public to know this too, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, we can see that you're very stressed out by all this, and we want to help you. So we're going to refer you to the Office of Medical Services so you can undergo some psychological counseling to help you sleep at night and make you better and get rid of your anxiety. So we're going to set up an appointment for you to meet with a psychologist. Now, where do you suppose that goes? The interview's over, the document is falsified, employee is paranoid, obsessive, compulsive, and disgruntled.